My name is Steve R. Hawkins, Intelligence Sergeant. When I first arrived in Vietnam, I got stuck in the rear for 3 boring weeks, serving as an instructor for the Vietnamese Special Forces at Nha Trang.
By the time 2003 had rolled around, World War II themed games were a dime a dozen. Then came along a development team called Pterodon, who took a stab at something original and created Vietcong, a first-person shooter set during the Vietnam War. You play as a soldier named Steve Hawkins. That's right, Steve Hawkins. In the game's prologue, Steve is dropped into South Vietnam and begins a series of missions with the Special Forces, with a crew of soldiers under his wing.
Horse shit!
The variety between missions is worth mentioning, as it's not always just a matter of getting from point A to point B. Maybe you have to defend a choke point, conduct a bit of recon, or rescue POWs from enemy villages. There's a lengthy section where you move through an underground network of tunnels, and a particularly woeful level set in a swamp in the dead night. You know, the type of level that really helps build character. But you can't fault these guys for trying to make each level different from the last. Everything is very story driven, and they've taken a real cinematic approach to the storyline overall, with cutscenes between missions, lots of dialogue in game, and a soundtrack that tries to capture the period.
What's going on? Another attack?
No, but this looks bad, I'm afraid.
There's a lot of talk about Charlie this and Gook that, and most of it is very expository and not too engaging. But you can see where they were going with this, having the whole sort of Apocalypse Now vibe with all the different team members. I just don't think they captured the feel they were going for. It doesn't help that the character models look like zombies either. Your teammates do play a larger role outside of the cinematics, and you actually require them throughout missions. You've got a point man, engineer, radio man, medic, and machine gunner. At any time if you get lost, the point man can take lead and help you get back on track. The engineer and medic replenish your ammo and health, and the machine gunner, well, machine gun stuff. The radio man is probably the most interesting of all your squad mates, because without him you can't get in contact with your CO and get your next set of objectives. This is a really cool idea and just one of the many clever ways the game tried to set itself apart.
1, this is 6. Good job. Try to find some enemy caches, and then move toward the second canyon as planned. Over.
Through a simple command menu you can issue orders to these guys on the fly, which is a neat idea, but it is a little bit ruined simply because the teammates move so goddamn slow. More often than not, you'll just run ahead, forcing them to keep up. The game's biggest strength, however, is its sense of immersion and realism.
Here we go. Enjoy the fireworks.
There's a dozen or so real-life weapons available in the game, and they're all modelled with extreme attention to detail. Hip firing, something the 90s shooters are well known for, is all but useless here. Aiming down the sights will improve your accuracy tenfold and is a must for long-range firefights. Even with the dated visuals, this can be a really tense game. VC troops hide in tunnels and clumps of foliage, waiting to strike you when you least expect it. Most of the time, hiding in the bushes will keep you hidden from enemy sight, but it's not entirely consistent. Now, this is the same thing that pissed me off about the jungle level in Soldier of Fortune 2, where you can be covered head to toe in the bushes, but enemies can still see you clear as day. Vietcong doesn't suffer from this nearly as much, but you will have a few deaths from psychic enemies that seem to be able to shoot you through trunks and other large patches of obscuring bush. It wouldn't be that much of a problem if you didn't die so damn quick. Damage taken is somewhat more realistic than other shooters at the time, and you can only take a handful of bullets before dying. Every time you take a bullet, Hawkins screams bloody murder, and your heart rate amps up as if it's about to explode out of your chest. It works in making gunfights suspenseful and urgent, but it also feels a little bit over the top. I mean, even from a pistol shot, the guy starts having a wheezing attack. The differences between normal and hard mode are almost indistinguishable, and if an enemy opens fire on you, you're usually dead almost instantly. You're also only given a limited amount of quick saves, and I just don't think that lends itself to this type of gameplay, where death is often unavoidable and can occur unexpectedly.
Fuck me. I can't take much more of this.
But then annoyingly, playing the game on the easiest setting makes it a total breeze, giving you unlimited quick saves and lowering enemy damage to the point that it becomes laughable. Laughable! The difficulty you end up going with will be based on whether or not you want to crawl through the jungle or sprint through it, guns blazing. I guess I wish they just had to balance these modes out a bit better. Aside from the enemy forces, you've also got to contend with all manner of traps laid by the VC, including trip mines and pits of spikes. It can be pretty hard to spot these, and more often than not, you won't see them at all. This can be really annoying and does feel very cheap at times. It's also elevated my blood pressure significantly when I was trying to capture footage for this review, as it quite often comes out of nowhere and always scares the living shit out of me. You can always get your point man to lead the way, and he will direct you around these hazards, but like I said earlier, they move extremely slowly, so make sure you've got a couple of hours to spare before taking this route.
On point. We're heading west.
I can remember reading about this game in PC Powerplay 10 odd years ago, well before it was released, and it said that the developers travelled to Vietnam to take reference photos to use as textures in the game. There's a lot of detail in the environment, and there's usually always something filling up the screen, but everything is very low poly and the animations are stiff and simplistic, even when compared to other games at the time.
We have contact on the west. Looks like a million gooks are coming at us.
Not too long after this, Far Cry was released, and it makes Vietcong look like complete garbage. Character models are just hideous. Hawkins looks mentally challenged and has a severe overbite. And I think there's literally 1 or 2 different models for the VC soldiers, which you will see over and over again. Not the kind of thing you'd expect from a game made in 2003. Thankfully, the sound design is incredible, during the jungle levels anyway, with great atmospheric ambient effects and lots of chunky weapon sounds. As I said earlier, the story is pretty bad and so is the voice acting, but at least there appears to have been a real focus and sense of effort put into the sound design where it matters most. Vietcong is a great example of a game with a lot of good ideas, some which came to fruition and others that seem to be struggling for air. But I would still probably suggest Vietcong for those moments when the game comes together. Some of the gunfights in the jungle levels are still immersive and fun to play, even to this day. During those moments when you're crouching behind a patch of ferns with mosquitoes buzzing around your face and the rain pouring down heavily, as you wait for that VC to stick his head out again, you'll forget all about the game's shortcomings. And the amount of Vietnam War shooting games is so few that it's almost worth it for that alone. The game still has a very active multiplayer community that offers a lot of support in getting your hands on a working version of the game and getting it running on modern systems. War may be hell, but at least with Vietcong it's somewhat bearable.